There are some old stories that need to be preserved, not for their literary value so much as the fact that they're all true. I mean, for example, down in Kentucky, in the old 5th Congressional District, it's about as solid, rock-ribbed Republican as any place in the country. Towns like London, Corbin, Somerset, you cannot find a Democrat anywhere around there. So the word spread like wildfire when one of the old citizens up and changed his registration from Republican to Democrat. And a couple of the boys went around to see him and said, "Uncle Willie, what in the world are you doing registering as a Democrat?" He said, "Well, fellas," he said, "I just come from the doctor. And he told me that I don't have very long to live. And so I figure if somebody's got to go, I want it to be one of them and not one of us." That's the kind of story you hear down in the 5th District, as they call it. Another was about the ventriloquist, and he was a fellow who traveled around from one county fair to the next doing his act, and one day his car broke down. He walked to a nearby farmhouse, and they called for the wrecker, and the farmer said, "Well, come on, young man, sit up here on the porch with me, and I'll give you a nice glass of water, and we'll wait for the wrecker to come." So they were sitting there chatting, and the ventriloquist looked down and he said, "Farmer, can your dog talk?" And the farmer said, "No, my dog can't talk." The dog said, "Yes, I can. Let me tell you, stranger, this old man's so cheap, he don't feed me nothing but table scraps, makes me sleep under the porch. I got fleas because he don't give me no bath. I've had it around here. I'm going to run down the road, find me a better farm to live at." Well, the farmer was dumbstruck, absolutely shocked that his dog could talk. But they finally got to chatting again, and ventriloquist looked over and he said, "Farmer, can your horse talk?" The farmer said, "No, I don't know, that horse can't talk." The horse said, "Oh, yes, I can. Let me tell you, stranger," he said, "this old man's so cheap he could afford a tractor, but he makes me do all the work around here. I gotta work every single day of the week except Sunday, and my day off, and the kids come out from town and ride me around the corral." He said, "This is terrible, and they don't give me nothing but rotten oats to eat." He said, "It's a terrible farm, terrible farm. I'm gonna jump over a fence and get away from here and go find me a better place to live." Well, the farmer was absolutely shocked at this. His dog and his horse, just amazing. But they did finally get to talking again, sipping on their water. Ventriloquist looked over, he said, "Now, farmer, those sheep over there, do they belong to you?" Farmer said, "Now, don't you believe a dang word them sheep tell you. They're the linest sheep in this county." There was a young man in New York City whose greatest dream was to own a suit from Brooks Brothers. He scrimped and saved, managed his budget so carefully for years. Finally, he was able to get there. Finally, he could afford that suit. He went up to Brooks Brothers, he got fitted, he got measured, picked out the fabric, and 3 weeks later they called and said, "Your suit is ready." So he went up there and they put it on him. He stood in front of that 3-way mirror, admired himself. They said, "Now, sir, do you want your new suit in a box or on a hanger?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm going to wear it. Throw my old clothes away. I'm going to wear my new suit." So he came out of Brooks Brothers feeling like $1 million. He was walking down the avenue, ran into a friend of his. "Hey, Billy, how are you?" I said, "Hey, Charlie, how are you doing?" "Charlie, is that a new suit?" He said, "Well, yeah, it's the Brooks Brothers. I get all my clothes at the Brooks Brothers now." I said, "Well, how do you like it?" He said, "Well, it's terrific. I love it. Beautiful fabric, nice cut. It's a good fit and everything." But he said, "I'm curious, why the lapel? Why does that lapel curl up like that?" And he said, What do you mean?" He said, "That lapel is curls." He said, "It's not supposed to do that." He said, "Well, I'm heading back up that way. I'll just stop in at Brooks and tell him to fix it." So he went back in, he found the salesman, told him that he just bought the suit, but this lapel was curling up and it shouldn't do that. The they got the tailor over there and they started marking him up with chalk and so on. And I said, that's fine, sir. He said, now just slip that jacket off and we'll have it ready for you in 3 weeks. He said, 3 weeks? No, I want it right now. I said, well, I'll tell you what, sir, you can fix this suit right now. Right while we're standing here, you can fix your suit. So I want you to take your chin and just put it over there like that. Now you see, look in the mirror, you see what that does to the lapel? Makes it lie down just perfectly. He said, sure does, yeah. So he came back out of the store feeling like $1 million all over again, and was going down the street again. Happened to run into another friend of his. Hey, Sam, how you doing? He said, Charlie, is that you? Is that really you? I said, yes, it is. He said, you look sharp. You really look sharp, Charlie. He said, that's a new suit, I'll bet you. I said, well, it's the Brooks Brothers. I get my clothes up there now. He said, well, that's terrific. He said, but why are they cutting them that way now? What are you talking about? What do you mean, why are they? Well, why are they cutting them with the sleeves a different length? He said, what do you mean? He said, look at that. They make the sleeves a different length. He said, oh yeah, I didn't notice that before. Well, I'm heading back up that way. I'll just have them fix it. I'll stop in there. Went back into the store and found the salesman, and he said, look, the sleeves are different. He said, sir, you're right. We need to get that fixed right away. That doesn't look right. He said, leave the jacket with us for 3 weeks and we'll have it ready for you. He said, no. I need it right now. Come on, I need it right now. You get it fixed. He said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, sir. I want you to take your hand and reach up there and grab, and you see what that, you see that? Look at that. Check it out. Check it out in the mirror. It looks perfect now, doesn't it? He said, yeah, it sure does. So he came back out of the store just feeling pretty good again. Ran into another friend of his, Leon. He said, hey, Leon, what are you up to? He said, Charlie, you're looking sharp, man. You are really looking sharp. I said, well, I should feel sharp. I've got a new suit from Brooks Brothers here. He said, well, that's great. He said, but I'm wondering why they do it that way. Look, there's a funny crease in your pants there. And he said, well, I don't know why that should be, but I'm heading back up that way. I'll just stop in and have him take a look at it. So he went back in, got the salesman over, and explained that the trousers had this funny crease in them. And the guy said, sir, he said, if you'll slip the suit off and leave it with us for 3 weeks. He said, no, I don't want to hear about 3 weeks. I want to fix it now. And so I said, sir, I'll tell you what you do then. I want you to take your hand and put it right there. And it's important that you do that, and don't move your hand. If I move my hand, I'll probably forget all about the rest of the story, so I need to keep my hand still. Anyhow, he said, I want you to do that. And he said, and then as you walk, I want you to kick your leg out, just like that. Just as you take a step, just kick your leg out. He said, look at that. And I want you to notice how straight that crease is. It's beautiful. It's a perfect fit. And Charlie said, yeah, man, you're right. He said, that's good. So Charlie came back out of the store, and it was like a little ray of sunshine came down from heaven and singled him out on the sidewalk. And he was walking along just feeling terrific. And he happened to cut across the end of Central Park, and there were a couple of bums sitting there commiserating with each other, and they were saying, oh, man, here we are, we're all out of Thunderbird, and nobody cares whether we live or die. We're just at the bottom of the social totem pole. And it's the end of the world for us, and we're just surviving. He said, it's miserable. Nobody cares about us at all. His friend said, that's right. He said, we're bad off. He said, we are really the end of the world. He said, we're terrible. He said, but you know, it could get worse. He said, here came Charlie. He said, look at that poor fellow coming along. Look at all the things that are wrong with him. His friend said, yeah, but isn't that a beautiful Brooks Brothers suit? Bert Combs was a governor and federal judge and had one of the greatest senses of humor of anyone I ever knew. There are a couple of stories that he used to tell, and they need to be preserved. down there, a little town called Grander Switch in near Tompkinsville. It's a little place where everybody knows everybody and they know what they're up to. And the fellows at the furniture store were really surprised one Saturday when in came Miss Lucy, an old maid, and announced that she wanted to buy some twin beds. And the salesman said, "Now, Miss Lucy," he said, "I'm happy to sell you the twin beds, but," he said, "I need to ask you, why would an old maid lady like you want to be buying twin beds?" And she said, "Well, young man, every night before I go to sleep, I get me a flashlight and I look under the bed to see if there's a rapist there. And I figure with twin beds, I've doubled my odds." There was a young man down on the farm who was headed off to the university. And his daddy took him down to the train station and said, "Son, I want you to know how proud we all are of you. You know, you're the first one in our whole family that's ever went off to college. And I know you're going to do a good job up there. I know you're going to work hard, come back to the farm a very smart man." Well, he said, "I've been thinking about this." He said, "I know that college is a lot of book learning, a lot of studying, and a lot of work. But," he said, "it should be more than that. I want you to have some fun, too. I want you to make friends and have a nice time." He said, here's $100. I want you to put this in your pocket and promise me that you'll just spend that money having fun with it." Well, the boy got up to college with that $100 and he went wild. And he blew through it the first week. And he called home and he said, "Paul," he said, "this here university is just fabulous. These people up here are so smart." He said, "It's amazing up here. It's just amazing." He said, "Paul, they've even got a professor up here that can teach a dog how to speak." The old man said, "Well, teach a dog how to speak? Why would you want to have a dog that could speak?" He said, "Paul, think about it now. Suppose you was out hunting with Old Pounder, your favorite hunting dog. You was out hunting with him, and you know how when he sees them birds, he has to hit that point, you know, and do what those dogs do." He said he wouldn't need to do that no more. He'd just look up at you and say, "Hey, Paul, birds is in them trees over there." He said, "Paul, why don't you send Old Pounder up here, and the professor will take him into class and teach him how to speak." And the old man said, "I don't think I could do that." He said, "I don't know." He said, "Paul, just think of it. The birds is in them trees over there." So the old man said, "Yeah, that's not a bad idea, I guess, after all." He said, "But Paul, the tuition is $400. $400? He said, "But Paul, the birds is in them trees over there. Think about that. You'd be the first man in the county that had a dog that could speak." Well, the old man finally gave in. He shipped the dog and $400 off, and the parties really began in earnest up there at the university. End of the semester, and the kid called home. He said, "Paul, Pounder's just doing great up here. He's a wonderful hunting dog, and he's a great speaking student." He said he's done so good that they've agreed to accept him in the foreign languages program. He said, "Foreign languages?" He said, "Yeah, Paul, just think about this. Suppose you had some Frenchman come down there on the farm with you, and you took him out hunting." He said, "Old Pounder could look up at you and say, 'Papa, les oiseaux sont dans les arbres.'" He could say that to you, that Frenchman. $400. Well, the old man didn't like it, but he shipped off another $400. At the end of that semester, the kid called home. He said, "Paul, Pounder, just fabulous up here." He said, "I'd put him on the phone with you, but he has went to the movies with my roommate. And but he said he's done so good up here that there's a professor up here that can teach him how to write." He said, "How to write? Yeah. Yeah, Paul, just think about it. You wouldn't even need to take him out in the field with you. He'd just leave a note on the kitchen table and tell you where them birds was at." That was another $400. Well, over the course of the next few years, that boy had Pounder enrolled in modern dance, astronomy, comparative religions, interpretation of harp music, He had all kinds of classes, each one with a tuition of $400. And by the time the classes were over and the graduation occurred, he'd gone through quite a bit of money of the old man. But graduation did occur. And they got on the train and went home. And the old man went down to the station to meet him. And the boy got off. And the old man said, well, where's Pounder? Where's my favorite hunting dog? He said, Paul, he said, I got to tell you a story. Let's walk down the platform here a little bit, just the two of us. He said, Pounder was so good up there at the university. He was one of the most popular guys on the campus. He was helping out at the Deke House during rush week. He was almost voted most popular student. Everybody loved him. He said, we got up there on the train to come home this morning, and I said, Pounder, we done finished our education and we're heading home. We're going to go home and see Ma and Pa on the farm. He said, old Pounder looked over at me and he said, boy, do you suppose your daddy's still a-sleeping with that widow Smith lives down the road? He said, Pa, that dang loudmouth dog, I had to kill it. Old man said, you done right, son. You done right.